generally speaking, four types of people have been mentioned that have drawn the special favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are alladina an'ama Allahu alayhim. People got these favors through various aspects. Some of them got this favor through the aspect of nubuwah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted them prophethood, and they received direct revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which guided them and also put them in a position to guide others. These are the highest ranking slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And no one can achieve their rank, their status by their own knowledge or their own acts. These are the elite slaves of Allah. But though a person cannot be in their rank, a person may follow them, emulate them, and take them to be the best of examples. Then there are the Siddiqeen, the true followers of the Anbiya alayhimu salatu wassalam, and their outstanding characteristic was sidq, truthfulness. And the literal meaning of sidq is for something to be very strong, for something to be very tough. It is that spear which cannot be bent. It is that metal which cannot be dented. It is something very strong. So sidq is actually a strength. It's the reflection of a strength of character, which manifests itself in speech. It manifests itself in all actions of a person. A person is true to themselves, they're true to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they're true to the people around them. Then you have those people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave tawfiq to make immense sacrifices. And their sacrifices were based on what needed to be done at the time. Whatever was required from them at the time, they did not hesitate in giving that sacrifice. The Quran in Surah Yasin, for example, gives the example of Habib al-Najjar, this man who came to the aid of those people that were sent by Isa alayhi salam to invite a certain group of people, a certain city or town. And at that time, when these messengers were having the most difficulty, this person came to their assistance, and in the process, his own people killed him. So those people who are ready to do the sacrifice that is required at the time, this is the outstanding characteristic of the shuhada. And then there are the salihin. The salihin are those people who never compromise the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They never cross the line of halal over into the area of haram. They are always observant of their taqwa, and within them there will be many, many levels of salah, of taqwa, of piety. The Quran, from one perspective, is simply a description of these different kinds of people. If we were to look at the Quran and study it, the Quran is telling us about all four characteristics of people, all four types of people, their characteristics, their actions, their deeds, what deeds Allah likes, what deeds Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like. Towards the end of Al-Fatiha, we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after asking Him to be guided to the straight path, we're also asking Him to guide us from walking off of the path, to losing the path, to missing the path. غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ is symbolizing this. Al-Maghdub, ghadab is the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those who drew the anger of Allah, the wrath of Allah, the displeasure of Allah. And they did this by deliberately breaking the commands of Allah. After knowing, after receiving the information, they deliberately rejected it. They deliberately put it aside. They let another tendency overwhelm them. Perhaps it was the tendency of stubbornness. Perhaps it was the tendency to be arrogant, the tendency to not be outdone by someone, the tendency to look down at a prophet or his lineage or his book or his people. Could be any of those reasons. But they inside, after knowing the truth, deliberately rejecting it, this is something that draws the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then there is another group of people in the world who don't intend to go astray, they're well-meaning. They're well-meaning, but either because of lack of knowledge, or because of their inability to follow the knowledge, or because of their misinterpretations of the knowledge, they end up going astray. Like someone who has a map but is looking at it upside down. Like somebody who doesn't look at the map carefully enough. Like somebody who has the map in front of them but they're missing out on all the major landmarks that would help them guide, all the major intersections that would help them navigate. They're missing out on all of those, so what happens? They lose their way and they get lost. So dhalleen are the people that got lost. You don't always intend to get lost. In fact, most of the time when you get lost, it's because you're trying to find the right way, but you did not choose the right path. So there are two paths of deviance, two paths of going astray. There are two things that could deter us from that as-sirat al-mustaqim. One is after knowledge and understanding, some other tendency overwhelms us and stops us from an act, stops us from a commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or compels us to break a command of Allah. And the other is lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, or perhaps misinterpreting it, interpreting it according to our own desires, and then we go astray. So hidayat, what hidayat means, the milestones or landmarks that will lead us to hidayat, and what two things to look out for to seek protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to save us from going astray and save us from not fulfilling our purpose of life in this manner. Surah Al-Fatiha has encapsulated the whole picture of the path that you and I have to walk on. So may Allah Azza wa Jal enable us to reflect on this surah and use it as a guide. Use it as a guide for our guidance and for the guidance of others. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open up the doors of understanding the Quran through this surah, through the barakah of this surah, and through implementing it. And may Allah Azza wa Jal give us tawfiq to start understanding this message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put. We mentioned in the beginning that Al-Fatiha is an encapsulation. It's a summary of the Quran. It's a summary of all the wahi that was revealed to the Prophets ﷺ. It's a very powerful surah. We're reciting it every day, in every rak'ah of every salah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this more meaningful for us. Wa sallallahu wa sallama wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad.
فتهدي الضياء لها